Hi, you're watching TechCrunch TV. I'm Colleen Taylor. Sitting with me is Brian Overstreet, who is a startup founder and investor who has some opinions. You're going to be pretty impacted by this new tax law here. So thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So just to get started, can you tell me about yourself?
Sure. Along with a partner, back in '99, I started a company in San Diego called Sagent Research. We built it up over the last 12 or 13 years. Had about 40 employees, got it up to a nice revenue run rate, and we made the decision about a year ago now to sell the company. And we did successfully in the middle of 2012. And that was sort of that until we woke up rudely in late December and realized that we owed the state more tax than we realized, which prompted me to become a little more vocal on the issue.
Now, explain to me how you found out about this tax situation. What happened on December 21st?
It was sent out through an email from our law firm as just sort of an afterthought of, here's a list of upcoming California tax changes you might be interested in. They sent it out to all their clients. And somewhere buried in there at number 15 was this. And I sort of said, well, wait a minute, that applies to us. What just happened here? And then we started to investigate and started to call around and started to get a sense for what had happened and what was going to happen. And it was a pretty rude wake-up call.
And can you just explain to me what your understanding is of what's happening?
Well, so both on the federal and the state level, there are qualified small business tax exclusions or deferrals. On the state side, it used to be that you could exclude 50% of your gain from the sale of the stock of a small business, a qualified small business. So what that means in plain English is you pay half the tax that you normally would to the state of California on the sale of your stock. And unfortunately what they've done, or what's happened now, is that exclusion's gone away. So in our situation for 2012, we're paying the full tax rate like we would for any other sort of income. But the real problem is they did it retroactively going back 5 years. So you have people who are in my position who sold their companies 3-4 years ago who have spent the money or reinvested it or just don't necessarily have it anymore. And they're going to get a retroactive tax bill, a back tax bill that's going to actually include interest as well. And when I realized that's when I sort of got my hackles up. If this is just about me and our situation, I wouldn't be talking to you. I'm not a whiner. I don't want the attention. But somebody had to stand up and say, listen, that's just not right. I mean, I understand that the FTB has to do what they have to do, and they probably had very limited options given the legal background, and I'm sure you guys are aware of all that. But doing a 5-year look back on small business owners and entrepreneurs and investors in the state of California is really a bad thing to do right now. We are the engine of growth for jobs and everything else in this economy right now, and you're sort of sticking a needle in our heart, and it's tough. It's tough.
And when you think about, you don't have to get into your specific finances with me, but how much do you see this costing someone like you or other people that you've talked to?
Well, I've gotten a lot of feedback over the last few days since I sort of went public with my story, and I'm hearing all sorts of ranges. I'm hearing people who are talking mid-six figures that they're going to have to write a check for. I heard from one woman who was a mid-level manager at a local tech company here in San Francisco. I'm not going to name names, and she, along with her coworkers, actually exercised and sold stock from options last year and took this qualification and used that money for college education, vacations. And we're not talking about a lot of money in that case. We're talking maybe $5,000 to $10,000. But her statement was, I don't have $5,000 or $10,000 sitting around to give the state of California now on something that was already taken care of last year, and I don't know what I'm going to do about this. So it's not just a big rich guy tax. It's something that is going to impact everybody who works for small businesses who has an equity stake in that business.
Right.
So.
And I also want to ask, what's your plan here of action?
Listen, I'm shooting from the hip. I don't necessarily have a plan of action. I voiced my story and my frustration publicly because somebody had to. Somebody had to get the ball rolling, and I'm happy to keep the ball rolling. But I'm a business owner. I'm an entrepreneur. I have 3 young kids. I have things I need to do too, and being a tax evangelical type is not really high on my list. But somebody's got to, and somebody's at least got to raise the issue of fairness in all this. And if that's going to be me, then that's going to be me. But my understanding is the only thing we can do at this point is go to Sacramento and get some sort of action out of the assembly to change this law. The Franchise Tax Board doesn't make law, they enforce law. And so the fault doesn't necessarily lie with them, they're doing their jobs. But somebody has to hold some responsibility and say, yes or no, this is right or this is not right. And listen, this was not put to a popular vote, this was not done by any form of proper governmental authority. It was the enforcement of a court case. And I understand that, and there are constitutional issues, all that stuff. But especially on the back of Prop 30, which was voter approved, and we all get that, another major tax hike on entrepreneurs is not a great idea. And I think the governing body in the state needs to understand that, and at least hear that, and understand what's going to happen and what's going on. So if that's got to be me, then I guess I'll do it.
And what do you think the impact could be if this assessment does, go into effect as
Right.
it is? What is the effect for entrepreneurs like you here?
I see it in kind of a multi-mode. Right off the bat, a lot of us are going to have to write big checks, which nobody likes to do, and that can have a real financial impact on us all individually. But longer term, you're talking about a situation where we've all been hit with a retroactive tax. And that's not going to leave a good taste in anybody's mouth. And especially when you factor in the high cost of doing business in this state, the very difficult regulatory environments that we face in the state. And now you're telling me that I have to worry about what I might have done 5 years ago, that I thought I did everything right. It's just mind-blowing. And I'm not sure how people are going to feel about starting up and investing in this state when this sort of thing happens. Because what's going to happen next, You asked me 3 weeks ago would I be sitting here talking to you about this, I would have said you're insane. But what's going to happen next? I have no idea. And you can't plan and run a business when you have no idea what's going to happen next. You're wasting your time. So it's tough. It's really tough.
And I guess it's the retroactive effect of that as well. It's
Right.
the rug being pulled out from under you.
Well,
It's
that's
not
right.
even.
That's right. The state of California can change their mind mid-year and have it affect the whole year, and that's fine. I get that. And the reality of how this might get resolved is probably not going to help us, my situation, because it happened this year. So fine. But it's the 5-year look-back thing that is really troubling because, again, you've spent the money, you've invested the money, it's gone, and now the state's saying to you that you have to give it back and pay interest and potentially penalties in certain circumstances. And, it's just not right.
Do you think it's gotten to the point that you would advise anybody now to start a business somewhere else other than California?
Well, listen, I'm a product of California's public university. I hire a lot of people out of the UC system. I'm a big fan of the state of California. I just flew in from Washington where I didn't see the sun for 4 days straight. So, there's a lot of reasons to be here, and I don't want to scare people off. But it's a difficult environment, and I think that when you look at some of what the other alternatives are that have developed into hub spots, especially places like Austin, and it's a much more inviting process, it's a much more inviting city, it's a much more inviting regulatory and tax authority, you have to juggle that a little bit. You have to be considering that in your assessment of where you want to be and where you want to run a company. And that's unfortunate because we should all want to be here. It's the best place in the world. So.
Is there anything else that you want to make sure to convey?
You don't think I got myself in enough trouble as it is?
No, it was great. You didn't get into any trouble.
No, I think that's it. I think, my goal is to, one, make people aware, because it would horrify me if this had happened 5 years from now and all of a sudden I got a tax bill in the mail for, a huge amount of money that I didn't know was coming. So I want to make sure people know about this. And secondly, I think people need to start talking to their state assemblymen and assemblywomen and convey to them that this situation is really counterproductive to entrepreneurial growth and spirit in the state of California, and they need to look at this. And I know it's a tough time. I know it's the last thing people want to talk about is, tax breaks for rich people, but we're talking about small businesses. We're talking about people who have worked very hard over a long period of time and had, a great deal of luck to be able to get to where they are. And to be able to hit them retroactively with more tax is just not right, and somebody's got to do something.
Very well said. Thank you, Brian.